right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our, once again, coronavirus day, whatever it is. Uh, AP Human Geography. Currently, we're going to be looking today, building up our knowledge from what we looked at the other day when it comes to cities. And today, we're going to be looking at how cities are actually planned out. Sorry, I got a little something in my throat there. Anyway, how cities are actually planned. If you have signed on to Google or Nearpod already, go ahead and do so. Your bell ringer is on there. It's actually a little bit of a video bell ringer. So I want you to use this and kind of watch what they present here. And I want you to use that and kind of think about your city planning project. Now, this is a little bit you're going to be taking some inspiration on. We're not going to go into a lot of detail with the city planning project right now because that's actually going to be coming up in Wednesday. We're going to do city planning project part 2. So right now, go ahead and watch the video, answer these questions about it. What about the presentation? What about the presentation do you like? And what are some things, if you thought this project had actually, while it never developed, I want you to think about how this plan may have affected cities today. A little bit about the video you're going to be watching here is that Epcot, the experimental prototype community of tomorrow, before it was an amusement park in Florida, it was originally meant to be a planned city. And they use these ideas for urban planning that was created since the end of World War II. So in this video from 1966, Walt Disney presents his ideas for what's called Epcot City, some of which do make a lot of sense, like fully electric public transportation. You're not going to have like city buses running around. You're going to have trains and one thing called the People Mover, which, by the way, you can still ride in Florida. They actually have the People Mover there. They also have a People Mover in a couple of airports. In Atlanta, it's kind of like a electric train, as well as there's one in, I want to say Dallas, the Dallas airports. Other ideas he has here are a little bit more far-fetched, such as a completely enclosed downtown area and shopping area, which essentially, like if you were to take downtown Baton Rouge and put a roof over the entire thing, a giant roof. So go ahead, watch this video. I want you to think about what he's saying and doing here, and then we'll come back to the Nearpod in a second. Here we go.
That will meet people expressed right here in this experimental community. Well, that's our basic philosophy for Epcot. By now, I'm sure you're wondering how people will actually live and work and move around in our community of tomorrow. So in the next few minutes, we'll go into detail about some of our preliminary sketches and layout. Remember, though, as I said earlier, this is just the beginning. With that thought in mind, let's have a look. No city of today will serve as the guide for the city of tomorrow. Epcot will be a planned environment, demonstrating to the world what American communities can accomplish through the control of planning and design. Epcot begins with an idea new among cities built since the birth of the automobile. We call it the radio plan. Picture a wheel. Like the spokes of the wheel, the city fans out along a series of radios from a bustling hub at the center of Epcot. A network of transportation systems radiate from this central hub, carrying people to and from the heart of the city. These transportation systems circulate to and through 4 primary spheres of activity surrounding the central core. First, the area of business and commerce. Next, the high-density apartment housing. Then the broad green belt and recreation land. And finally, the low-density neighborhood residential streets. Epcot's dynamic urban center will offer the excitement and variety of activities found only in metropolitan cities: cultural, social, business, and entertainment. Among its major features will be a cosmopolitan hotel and convention center, towering 30 or more stories. Shopping areas, where stores and whole streets recreate the character and adventure of places around the world. Theaters for dramatic and musical productions. Restaurants, and a variety of nightlife attractions. And a wide range of office buildings, some containing services required by Epcot's residents, but most of them designed especially to suit the local and regional needs of major corporations. But most important, this entire 50 acres of city streets and buildings will be completely enclosed. In this climate-controlled environment, shoppers and theater-goers and people just out for a stroll will enjoy ideal weather conditions, protected day and night from rain, heat and cold, and humidity. Here the pedestrian will be king, free to walk and browse without fear of motorized vehicles. Only electric-powered vehicles will travel above the streets of Epcot's Central City. This towering hotel is the visual center of Epcot, the shining jewel at the center of the city. It will offer tourists and vacationers not only the most modern guest rooms and convention facilities, but also a 7-acre recreation deck located high above the pedestrian and shopping areas of the city. But hidden from view, directly beneath the hotel, is another kind of vital center, Epcot's transportation lobby. Although out of sight to hotel guests, this transportation terminal will play a key role in the city of tomorrow's ability to meet the needs of both visitor and resident. Two separate but interconnecting transit systems will move people into and out of Epcot in speed, safety, and comfort through the central terminal. Both are electrically powered. The high-speed monorail for rapid transit over longer distances, and a concept new to the American city for shorter travel distances. Gateway People Mover. Automobiles and trucks will not be barred from Epcot. In fact, a vast armada of vehicles will continuously flow through the heart of the community, traveling below the pedestrian level on roadways reserved for specific types of vehicles. Epcot's transportation hub, and see how traffic flows through the heart of the city on 3 separate levels. At the bottom of the stack is the truck route, reserved for supply vehicles. Trucks will have easy access to all loading docks and service points for the delivery of commercial goods. The level is the automobile throughway, exclusively for cars. Adjacent to the roadway are parking areas for the convenience of hotel guests. For the motorist just driving through, no stoplight will ever slow the constant flow of traffic through the center of Epcot. But automobiles and freeways will not be Epcot's major way of entering and leaving the city. The transportation heartbeat of Epcot will be the 2 electric-powered systems, monorail and wetway, that radiate to and from the transportation lobby. And the key system in this coordinated network will be the Wetway People Mover. The first People Mover installation is already in daily operation at Disneyland. On peak days, it carries nearly 40,000 passengers. The cars you see here are approximately 5/8 scale, considerably smaller than full-size passenger cars would be for city use. Epcot's People Mover is a silent, all-electric system that never stops running. These cars continue to move even while passengers are disembarking or stepping aboard. Power is supplied from a series of motors embedded in the track, completely independent of the cars. No single car can ever break down and cause a rush hour traffic jam in Epcot. Because the cars run continuously, there will be no waiting in stations for a wetway people mover. The next car is always ready. Now let's go back to the transportation lobby and see how the wetway will travel along one radial between the center of Epcot and a typical residential area. Leaving the transportation lobby, the wetway trains travel above the downtown streets. Within minutes, the wetway passes through the first station. Many people who work in the offices and stores of Epcot City Center board the wetway here for their trip home. Some people leave the wetway here too. They live in Epcot's high-density apartments surrounding the Metropolitan Center. Most passengers who ride the wetway live beyond the apartments and stay aboard the people mover as it crosses Epcot's sheltering greenbelt. Epcot's greenbelt is more than just a broad expanse of beautiful lawns and walks and trees. Here, too, are the community's varied recreational facilities. Its playgrounds for children, its churches, and its schools. Beyond the greenbelt are Epcot's neighborhood areas of single-family homes. This is one radial neighborhood. Here and throughout the community, residents returning from work or shopping disembark from the wetway at stations located conveniently just a few steps from where they live. Homes are located in a wide green area that provides light recreation activities for adults and play areas for children. Circulating through this area are footpaths reserved for pedestrians, electric carts, and bicycles. Children going to and from schools and playgrounds will use these paths, always completely safe and separated from the automobile. The resident leaving home in his automobile will drive down a street reserved for motor vehicles. He then enters a one-way road that circles the city center. This road carries the motorist onto the main thruway connecting Epcot with other points in Disney World and with Florida's nearby network of major highways. But most Epcot residents will drive their automobiles only on weekend pleasure trips. From all over the community, residents going to their jobs converge by wetway on the center city. Many work downtown in offices, stores, and shops. But most employees go beyond the city core to their jobs. Transportation lobby, monorail trains carry employees to the park or to Epcot's 1,000-acre industrial park. At this central station in the industrial complex, passengers disembark from the monorail and again board wetway cars that radiate to each facility. This industrial complex will provide employment for many people who live in Epcot. But it will mean much more, not only for this community, but also for American industry. Here, the Disney staff will work with individual companies to create a showcase of industry at work. In attractive park-like settings, the 6 million people who visit Disney World each year will look behind the scenes at experimental prototype plants, research and development laboratories, and computer centers for major corporations. So this is Epcot, the heart of Disney World. In other parts of the country, a community the size of this prototype could become part of an entire city complex composed of many such communities, planned and built a few miles apart. In Disney World, about 20,000, an exciting, living blueprint of the future. And now here again is Walt Disney.
We'll go ahead and stop it there. But from what you've seen on this one, what ideas would you want to include in your city planning project? And beyond that, let's say if Walt Disney had not passed away, let's say he had pushed this idea through. Even though it never actually developed, how might this plan have affected cities today? So that's the two things you need to be looking for with your bell ringer. One, what impressed you the most? What would you want to include with your city planning project? And two, while it never developed, how might this plan have affected cities today? So go ahead and send in your answers. And we're going to move forward in 3, 2, and 1. Remember, guys, if you do not finish it right here live, you will have access to this on Google Classroom. I've already posted it up there. And I'll be posting the video portion as soon as I can, as soon as I get it edited. Because needless to say, that little 10 minutes there with the presentation, I'm sure you don't want to be staring at my face. So I've already downloaded the presentation part itself, and I'll be cutting that in and splicing it in there and hopefully getting that done as soon as possible. So let's go forward here. Totally useless, but interesting. Rio de Janeiro, Brazil has a population density of 12,382 people per square mile. By comparison, Baton Rouge, Louisiana only has about 906 people per square mile. Rio is it's not one of the biggest cities in the world, but it's one of the densest. It's one of the most crowded. In fact, it's been so crowded, you can see here with this picture, they're wanting to expand their building to other places. You have this one island here, and they're starting to build on the island right there, just because it is crazy dense. And if you've ever been to ever get the chance to go to Brazil during the summer months, by the way, because Brazil is on the southern hemisphere, their summer lasts from about October to March. So it's currently summer in Brazil right now, believe it or not. Winter is actually in the middle of our summer because they're on the bottom half of the earth. Strange enough, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. So they are one of the densest places in the Americas. Not one of the densest cities total, most dense. I believe Tokyo, Japan is even more dense than them. Tokyo, Japan has around 18,000 per square mile. So very dense, very crowded. All right, let's go forward. So here's what you're going to need to know. Bid rent curve. So seeing this curve, you got one side, that x-axis, the y-axis going up and down there. Or is it X or Y? Either way, you have to ask Miss LaCour on that one because I completely suck at math. But anyway, on one side, you've got the rent per square meter. And as that rent goes up, you're going to notice something. For each of these areas, residential, commercial, or industrial, if you're closer to the CBD, that central business district, you're going to have skyrocketing rents. And on the flip side of things, as you move away, you get more distance away from your city center, your rent's going to go down. Retail stores want to maximize their profits. So they would be willing to actually go ahead and spend more money for land close to the CBD. Case in point, if you go down downtown Baton Rouge, there's one corner. One side of the corner is Schlitz and Giggles, a pizza place. The other side is Raising Cane's. Now, both of those places pay a lot in rent every single month. However, for them, it's a necessity. There is so much profit to be had in downtown Baton Rouge by selling food that they can go ahead and justify the expense. Otherwise, you'd be seeing them going out to other places. Raising Cane's, you'd probably be seeing them popping up somewhere around, say, really anywhere, Corporate Boulevard, or, no, the corporate one just closed, I think. Corporate Boulevard, Government Street and such, getting away from downtown. Schlitz and Giggles, there's another one that's over off of, over by not too far from Acadian, I believe, Acadian Thruway. Schlitz and Giggles, the second pizza place. But because there is so much profit to be had in downtown Baton Rouge, those two companies, they will actually make it worth their while to go ahead and get that land close to the CBD or pay that rent. The more accessible the area is to customers, the more profitable it's going to be in the long run. So once again, they want to try to stay close where there's plenty of people around. Downtown Baton Rouge, if you've ever gone down a weekday, I wouldn't suggest doing it now, but sometime during the summer after all this coronavirus is gone, I would say go to downtown Baton Rouge probably around 11 a.m. and just wait. Somewhere around the River Center, Old State Capitol, where all those restaurants are. Around 11 o'clock and just wait and watch what happens. You're going to see the lines at those restaurants start piling up because people come out from work who work in those tall buildings around there. They're going to come out and it's lunchtime. So from 11 until about 2 o'clock, you're going to have elevated traffic at all those restaurants. It's really accessible for all those customers, and therefore those businesses are more profitable in the long run. It's also why you see Raising Cane's, not just Raising Cane's, but any fast food joint, places like McDonald's, Burger King, and almost every single interstate on-ramp and off-ramp. If you decide to drive from Louisiana to Florida, almost every time you come to a little town with an on-ramp or an off-ramp to get on or to get off the interstate, you're going to see McDonald's, Burger King, fast food, gas stations, because it's easy access for all these travelers on the road. And lastly, the greater concentration of customers, higher profits. So that's those three things you need to know. One, they're going to be willing to pay more for that land close to the CBD. Two, they're going to have more accessibility for their customers. And three, the greater concentration of customers drives higher profits. This is going into more economics type thing here. But this is what gives us an example, a model for where our rent curves are in these central business districts. Make sure I'm still on here. Unable to connect to chat. Am I still here? And I'm thinking it might cut me off the chat from the Disney video because technically that is copyrighted. And you know how YouTube likes to have a stroke about such things. All right, so let's go forward. So urban models in the United States. Our first one is called the concentric zone model, also called the Burgess model, because it was created by a guy named Burgess in the 1920s. Now, this might look somewhat similar to the Epcot Center or the Epcot City presentation. Essentially, that's kind of the direct inspiration for it. In the center, you have your central business district is in the very center. Once you start branching out from there, you'll have this what's called the zone in transition. You need to know this one. That's that purple ring. That's going to be industry and a lot of low-income housing. What people would call the inner city would be here. Industry places and low-income housing, sometimes you'd even have like government project housing would be in there. Outside of that, you would have the working class housing, which is the orange area. Then you've got the light brown, which is middle class. And in the very outside ring, it's called the commuter zone. It's the suburbs. Those are places people who work in the city, but they live way away from the city. Now, this is a pretty good model, except it doesn't take into account a couple of things. One, it doesn't take into account geography. Let's say if there was a lake right here, massive lake. Where do you think that the middle class and the working class housing is going to move to? Let's say if we put a lake right up here in this area here. Well, naturally, you're going to see high income housing and middle class housing and maybe some working class start moving to be around that lake because that is hot retail property. The suburbs might be around it, but the thing you will not see there would be warehouse or industry or low income housing would not be near the lake. You'd actually kind of see a shift. Central business district stays there, but those two rings, the middle class and working class would start moving towards that lake, and it does not form a perfect ring anymore. And a lot of the middle class, the commuter zone and suburbs would be far away from the lake because, once again, that lake is valuable and that lake is going to cause property prices around there to really skyrocket. So here in the United States, one of my favorite places in the world, I've been there a couple of times. I love it, Denver, Colorado. Denver is a prime example, probably the best example you're going to find of this concentric model, the Burgess model. So you can already see here, there's a bit of a ring shape to Denver. You have all these different roads kind of coming around. It forms this ring around Denver. But if you were to look at it from a satellite view or an aerial view, you can see where Denver's really popping. Boom, there's your ring. Almost a perfect example. You see the downtown Denver towards the upper center of the area, all those tall buildings there. That's going to be where all your central business is going on. Outside of that, you're going to have some industrial areas, which is right. If you're looking at the city right there, if you look down towards a little bit to the right, kind of like where you see those two, the road split right there, the highway. That's a little bit of the industrial area, more industrial around here. So that's going to be your industrial and low-income housing. Then from there, you're going to have your middle-class housing. And then on the very outskirts, all the way on the horizon there, you've got your suburbs. These are the people who are daily commuter suburbs areas. And of course, kind of the big landmark for a lot of people who are big sports fans is the stadium where the Denver Broncos play. It used to be called Mile High Stadium. I think now it's Gillette Stadium. I'm not quite sure. I haven't really paid attention to the Broncos in quite some time. I'm not really a fan of theirs. Saints, naturally. But yeah, there is the actual stadium. And as you can see, the stadium is kind of in a warehouse area, industrial area. So you do have some industrial buildings around the stadium on both sides of the road there. So the stadium's kind of out towards the industrial place, kind of makes it more for the working class people to go to. And what you can't see from there is kind of cuts off, but where that blue border is, about maybe another quarter mile south of there, well, quarter mile down from there is a river. And that's kind of the river that separates the Rocky Mountains from Denver, or rather the Boulder, Colorado, all those areas away from Denver itself, and then the Rocky Mountains past that. All right, next up, the sector model. This was created by a guy named Homer Hoyt. So the sector model is also sometimes called the Hoyt model. I don't know what they'll call it on the AP test, but you're probably going to see, you're going to need to know that sector and Hoyt, same person. Hoyt is the guy who created it, and the sector model is what it is. In this model, the city does not have neat rings. So as you can see here, the concentric model is almost this bullseye, really perfect, really nice. But in the sector model, each of these different social groups are going to be forming multiple sectors coming out of the main central business districts. So maybe it's low-income housing, maybe it's factory workers, maybe it's middle class housing. In the case of number 4 there, that's your commuters. The suburbs might only be in one small spot. The same areas are appearing in both models, but there are some major differences here. Instead of being these nice, neat rings the way Burgess planned or the way Disney had planned, you actually see more of a realistic thing, just kind of these swaths. It almost looks like a kind of a cuts out of a pie or a cake. And all these different people are going to these different areas. So the Burgess model versus the Hoyt sector model. Now, where do you think we see this in the United States? Let y'all think about that for a second. Well, guess what? You actually see the sector model happening in Chicago. So there you've got the central business district right there in that kind of that little dot in the center. You've got some more central business district, central area coming out from the area there in the pink. Then you've got the west side. You've got the south side. By the way, south side of Chicago has a high African-American population, whereas the west side is typically more white middle class. But this would be a really good indicator of what it would show these different areas being for a sector model. So Chicago is another one, sectors. And it kind of goes hand in hand with what we've already seen with Chicago, being how these little tiny cities kind of merge together, because each of these sectors has the flavor of those little tiny cities, all merging together into Chicago. South side of Chicago's, we're going to have, if you remember from American history, the Pullman, Illinois is in there, where the Pullman rail car strike was. That was in there. The west side is places like Naperville and Aurora Heights, kind of the more middle class. And then up in these green areas, the far north side and the north side and far north side, that kind of the ice blue and green, that's many places where you'd find like the Magnificent Mile, which are where the millionaires of Chicago live. So all these different sectors going into it, just like that. And just for your viewing pleasure, here's what Chicago looks like. Central Business District. I think this picture is actually taken from the Sears Tower, known today as a Willis Tower, although I still call it the Sears Tower. Reason being is you can't see the Sears Tower in the picture. In fact, the height of this picture, I'm pretty sure this was taken from the observation deck. There's one tall black building kind of in the top right. This one tall building sticking out almost into the ocean. That's the John Hancock building. But beyond that, you can see where Chicago kind of ends, and you actually can see these sectors coming off. You've got one sector here of suburban housing, and there's another sector coming off of it, which is going to be your area with industrial areas. So all that goes together just like that. Perfect example, almost a perfect example. I'd probably say it's one of the best examples you can find. All right, next up, we have the multiple nuclei model. This was created by Chauncey Harris and Edward Ullman, also called the Harris-Ullman model for obvious reasons. Now, they said, you know what? Cities don't just have one single center of activity. There are multiple areas, multiple nodes. And those activities, people's activities in those areas can either be attracted to or repulsed by particular nodes, whatever they're looking for. So this is a bit of a takeoff. Chicago had already developed this sector model, but now we're seeing this one pop up, which is a variation of sector, and this one does something different. So you probably know what I'm going to look at with this one. As stated, it's created by these two guys in the city of Los Angeles. So let's take a look at Los Angeles. So you've got the central business area right there with those tall buildings. Then you've got suburbs. You've got a little bit of a green area. You've got industrial suburbs in this area, which would be, let's see, I don't see it. Yeah, industrial suburbs, 9. This 4 is going to be medium class or middle class residential. 1 is your central business district. 2 in purple, that's going to be your light manufacturing. 3 is going to be low class residential. That's going to be kind of the low class housing, low cost housing. And 5 is high class residential. That's kind of where the people with a lot of money and wealth are going to be. Here's what it looks like on a map. So you've got Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles, right there towards the center, downtown. That's going to be your central business district. But look at some of the places around here, places that have their own central business districts. You might recognize some of these. Hollywood, right there, kind of northwest of Los Angeles. You've got Beverly Hills next to that one, famous for Rodeo Drive, Mulholland Drive, a lot of shopping, ritzy places. Down south of that, you've got Santa Monica, best known for its beach areas. In Santa Monica, right there is where you've got Los Angeles International Airport. So each one of these smaller areas acts as a city unto itself. So it's a lot more decentralized, and therefore you're getting a lot of this multiple nuclei, these multiple nuclei around the area. You have Fullerton, Buena Park, Orange County. South of Orange County, you've got Anaheim, home of the Anaheim Ducks, as well as Disneyland. Up north of Los Angeles, you've got Pasadena. So all these little places are technically part of Los Angeles, but they also have their own, act as their own nuclei and have their own CBDs. And here's what Los Angeles looks like at night from the famous Hollywood sign. That's Los Angeles. Now, it's a little bit off in the distance. There's a lot of haze here. Los Angeles has a major pollution problem. But kind of towards this area here, right in the center, if it were a clear day, that's where you would end up seeing a little bit of Los Angeles proper, the actual downtown city there. But here's Hollywood, looking at the rest of Los Angeles. Next one up is one of the more unique models called the peripheral model, also called the galactic city model. Now, this was described by a guy named Harris, and he used it to describe Detroit. What these cities do is they'll usually have one central roadway acting as a circle around the city, sometimes called the Beltway. In the center of the Beltway, you're going to have your CBD, Central Business District. And then outside of that one, it's mostly suburbs, called the peripheral zone. There's not much when it comes to different types of housing. There are different, areas in there, low income, middle income, high income, but essentially it's all going to be suburban, all residential. Now, as you know, we've already seen this in Detroit. However, there's one other major city in the United States that does this, and that is Washington, D.C. Your central business district is in places like the Capitol, the Smithsonian, the Washington Monument, the White House. All that together is your CBD. And then outside the CBD, you're going to have essentially all these areas in brown here are all considered suburbs. Even though there are different universities, there's George Washington University, there's Southeastern University. not southeastern Louisiana, but just southeastern. And all these brown areas are going to be suburb areas. And here's what it looks like from the sky. So you've got your CBD, the Capitol building, which is towards the left. Towards the right. You see it kind of a green area with a white square in it, right rectangle. That's the Capitol building. You've got the White House, which if you follow this line, this road from the Capitol building, it's another green area, but there's a little tiny white dot. That's the White House. As you can see, though, everything around it, it's all houses, suburbs, apartment buildings. There's not much in the way of industry going on in Washington, D.C. A lot of the industrial stuff is actually happening across the river in Virginia or across the border into Maryland. And the majority of this is all going to be suburbs. There's a little bit of industry coming on, especially around these railroad tracks here. There's railroads right there that bring stuff in, warehouses around it. But for the most part, it's largely going to be residential. Our last one is called the Urban Realms model. Now, this is a little bit similar to the multiple nuclei model. This is kind of its own version of, takes on what they've done and takes it a little bit higher. And this is what we see with Phoenix, Arizona. Cities are made up of independent regions or realms. So in the grand scheme of things, places in, let's say, Los Angeles, places like Pasadena, Hollywood, Beverly Hills, all those areas, those are all still technically very much a part of Los Angeles. Los Angeles passes a law, they have to follow it. Well, with these urban realms, these smaller areas would be completely independent. Let's say, and this is something that Los Angeles could happen if, let's say, Anaheim decides, you know what, we want to be more independent. So to hell with Los Angeles, we're cutting them out completely. We don't need Los Angeles anymore. Well, in this case, you'd have these multiple independent regions, and each region has its own central business district. So you might compare this to East Baton Rouge Parish. So you've got this. Let's say if Zachary was still technically part of Baton Rouge, the Baton Rouge metro area. And technically, it is to a degree, but they're largely independent. You would end up seeing each of these smaller cities as separate entities. The city makes its own rules, they have their own everything. And then each city has its own central business district. So as you can see here, we've got our central city in the center in yellow, and we've got a bunch of smaller cities popped up around it. We've got this green city pops up, and they create what's called a new downtown. We have orange, purple, light purple, dark purple. Those are all break off into their own cities, and they actually have their own CBD in the center, these three edge cities. And then at the very far south, you've got an airport, because they're going to need some way to have some sort of transportation. Our best model for this one, Atlanta. So here's what Atlanta looks like. Boom. You have all these smaller areas kind of breaking off of Atlanta, and they're tied to Atlanta briefly, tenuously. However, downtown Atlanta, the central business district, is here, but you're also having these smaller cities popping up around Atlanta. Places like Athens, Georgia. What's another one? Let me think of one. Let me pull up my MapQuest. Atlanta. Let's go to maps. Places like Buckhead, Brookhaven. You've got East Point, College Park, Greenbrier. All those areas act as their own separate places. Decatur. Ooh, Decatur's a big one. I don't know why I forgot Decatur. So Athens, Decatur, all these areas are all part of the Atlanta area. However, they break off and do their own thing. Having said all that, apply for the rest of the session. We're going to collaborate here. Given what you know about city models now, and you've seen all these different examples, what model do you think would best describe Baton Rouge? And also be sure to explain it. Now, I put a hint on there. Use the Baton Rouge map on this screen to help you decide. So if you click on that map, ooh, I thought it would be a little bit bigger than that. Essentially, that's a map of Baton Rouge. Maybe we can zoom in. No, it doesn't want to work with the zoom in. That's crap. So that's Baton Rouge, more or less. You're seeing Interstate 12, Interstate 10. This one line, kind of this horizontal, vertical diagonal line here. And towards the center, that's Airline Highway. You're seeing places like Goodwood Boulevard right there. You're seeing where the mall, the Cortana Mall was right there on Florida Boulevard. Okay, Cortana Mall is kind of in the center there, that yellow area. So the question is, from what we've described with all these, how would you describe Baton Rouge? And be sure you explain why. Go ahead and take a few minutes on that one. I only have Mizell on. Hi, Mizell. How you doing? And I'm sure I'll edit that one out too. I'm sure you guys don't want to see me popping my neck and drinking Sprite in here with 7-Up. All right. Let's see. Mizell is in my 7th block. Let's see how he's doing. All right, looks like Mizell sent his in. Good job. I think sector would be best because Baton Rouge has some industrial areas separating commercial and residential areas. I can see where you're coming from on that one. I think it might work. One thing I would not say, unless you're looking at Baton Rouge Parish, I would not put it in the realm of multiple nuclei or I'm drawing a blank here, drawing a brain fart here. I would not put it in the realm of the urban realms model or the nuclei model, because even though there are different places in Baton Rouge like Goodwood and Broadmoor and such, they don't really have their own central business districts. There are some businesses there. Eventually, they might turn into central business districts, but a lot of Baton Rouge is going straight to Baton Rouge itself. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to say, hey, call up and get a date and say, hey, lady, hey, girl, get dressed up. Friday night, I'm taking you down to Sherwood Forest. No one does that. No one does it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and mark that one. I like this answer from you. Good job, Mizell, because you actually gave me not just the reason with the map you chose, but you also told me why you chose it. So good job. All right, now let's look at a few from other places around the United States. Europe, old cities, narrow streets. Because Europe has such a history with Christianity, the center is usually not a business district, but it's usually a church or maybe a public green space, a public common area, what's called like Boston does this one, at least they did, and I think they've got a central business district now. But Boston had Boston Common, and originally that was the center of Boston, where you were going to have the church as well as the public green area where everyone could share out. Now, with places in Europe that have this European model, wealthy people still live in the center of the cities. In fact, rent in these places is crazy. In the Baton Rouge area, $1,200 a month could get you a nice house to rent. If you don't want to buy a house, $1,200 a month can get you either a nice house on the outskirts of Baton Rouge or maybe a nicer apartment somewhere closer to downtown. However, $1,200 a month in France, if you were in Paris, that would get you one bedroom. That's all there is to it, just one bedroom. If you were trying to live in the center of Paris, France, $1,200 a month, you would get one bedroom. And essentially what you would have to do is you'd have to see if anyone needed a roommate. And the rent could be maybe about $3,000, $4,000 a month. And you all have to pool your resources together. $1,200 a month, there you go. It's kind of insane if you think about it. I saw one guy, as a thing, can't remember when it was. I believe he was paying about $800 a month for essentially a closet in France. He had a pull-out bed. It was essentially a walk-in closet. He had a bed, kind of a mattress that folded down from the side of the wall. He had a toilet and a sink. And that was it. So obviously you can't take a shower. You have a wash rag, have a bar of soap, do your stuff, lather up, rinse off at the sink, do your business in the toilet, flush, and then pull down your bed, go to sleep for the night. Now, the suburbs in these areas have high-rise apartments, as well as a lot of crime. The slums are part of that as well. So here's what Paris, France looks like from a satellite image. There's a satellite map of Paris. As you can see, it's almost completely circular. Number one in the center there, that is your central business area. That's the old part of town. 1, 2, 7, 6, and 5. That's the old part of Paris. Where that one is, but that's right where you're going to find Notre Dame Cathedral. Around 7, I believe, should be around 7 is where you're going to have the Eiffel Tower. So that's your old portion of Paris. That's going to be your main city area, the central business area, just the center of the city itself. Outside of that, you're going to have these areas. A lot of residential. Once again, as you can see, space is a bit of a premium. So if you're able to find one of these places, you're going to pay an arm and a leg for it. It's one of the good things about living in the United States is that we have such low density, population density, that while housing can be expensive, it's nothing compared to somewhere like Paris or maybe London. Those places are nuts. Next up, Latin America. Typically in Latin America, just like Europe, for obvious reasons, because of colonization, the church and the plaza, the city green, that area in the center is going to be your middle area, the center area. Shared area. Just like Paris, just like Europe, Latin America, because there's such a heavy European influence, the wealthy people are going to live towards the center of the town. The poor people live in the periphery, on the outskirts. Now, this is a combination of the concentric and the sector model. So here's where they differ from Europe. Is that there's usually going to be an industrial spine breaking off of the center. a central business district towards the center, and then an industrial spine where you have all your major factories and such in one kind of a straight shot off of there. But from there, all these other places, like in gray, you've got market areas. That's going to be where your a lot of your businesses and retailers are going to be. And in orange, you're going to have residential areas. And in blue is where the elite residential is going to be. And in this kind of this light pink color is pink industrial. And in blue is elite residential. So all those people living right in that area there. And the industrial spine up here in this pink coming off the top. All right, here we go. Mexico City is one of the best ways to see this. This is what Mexico City looks like on a map. The center of Mexico City, Alameda Central, is their main park, kind of like their version of Central Park. You've got the Metropolitan Cathedral right next to it. The mayor's house, mayor's office, the National Palace, Palace of the Constitution. But here's what it looks like in this Alameda Central. Let's look at that one on the next slide. That's what it looks like. You've got your church here. You've got all this area, the Central Alameda Park, Central Park area. And then you've got the high class, the high income housing around it. So it's kind of a blend between that concentric model and the sector model. Southeast Asia. Here's the funny thing about Southeast Asia. There is no clear central business district. Usually their center, because there's a lot of ocean area, different seas and such, South China Sea, the Yellow Sea, all those areas. You have the centers of your cities are going to be these old colonial ports. So Southeast Asian cities typically show uneven growth because of that. They just have their ports at the edge. That's where they're doing most of their business. And then typically more of the rich people are going to move towards those cities and form their own sectors off of those cities. Industry is way on the outskirts. They don't even get much of a say-so there. And around industry, you've got the poor people, the low-income housing. P.S. I know it says draw this, but you don't have to draw anything. So here's what Ho Chi Minh City looks like from a map. There's the Saigon River. You have the main ports area. Your central city is District 1 here. District 3, you're going to have more wealthier people. This purple area here, the Bintan, a little bit wealthy, kind of more middle class. And then once you get away from that one, you start to see where you get into industrial areas, where you have the low income and low class housing. Guy like District 4. I'd like to see that one up close because I've always been fascinated with islands. So District 4, as you can see here, it's essentially one big island. Wonder how they live. I'll have to look at that one later on. And here's Ho Chi Minh City, viewed from the port. So all these areas in Southeast Asia, they're closer to the port. They're going to have closer areas, bigger business by the port areas. Actually, it's kind of beautiful in a strange way. There's a lot of buses there, a lot of pavement, but I'm still finding this one a lot of green too. I don't know. It's different from what you usually see in the United States. All right, next up. Sub-Saharan Africa. This one is kind of strange because you have your central business district is broken into three segments. You've got the colonial, the traditional, and the market. This is the least urbanized type of city here. The biggest cities in Africa were set up by Europeans during colonization. So you're seeing those cities are going to look like these purple areas. It's really nice. Kind of these big, perfectly shaped and such. Have all these different lines and cuts and such. It's really nicely squared away. The traditional one is going to be in this yellow area right here. This darker yellow, kind of this golden yellow there. And that's just a little bit more. It's not as rigid, kind of laid back. And then you've got the market. And as you can see there in the market, this market district is usually every man for himself. It's broken up into smaller enclaves, and it's still got a lot of business there, but these are like street vendors and such. So there is a market there, but it's kind of spotty. Imagine if it's almost like a 24/7 farmer's market going on. That's what it is, that market zone. Out there, beyond that, you go back to almost like the Washington, D.C., that peripheral model, because outside that one in this light yellow, you've got different ethnic neighborhoods. You've got some mining and manufacturing, but it kind of goes right there with these mixed areas. Mining, manufacturing, ethnic neighborhoods, all mixed together. And in the green, you've got those satellite townships, like smaller offshoot towns and such. So worldwide, this is going to be the least mobilized area, least urbanized. And here is a place that's Es Al Salam. Let me pull it up here. Dar es Salaam. This is in Tanzania. It was actually originally settled by Arab traders. So Dar es Salaam, as you can see, it's on the port there, places where you're going to have a lot of really big stuff, markets going on. And you can see where these markets change. You've got these rigid areas where you're going to have these straight streets and such. Then you've got your traditional market areas, traditional CBD up at the top. And you've got your markets, which is, once again, almost every man for himself. All these market areas just kind of jumbled together. And here's what it looks like in real life. Beautiful town, beautiful. This is one of those places I think I'd like to go someday. Maybe I'll see it for myself. Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, right on the coast of Africa. Beautiful place. So the world is becoming more and more urbanized. So which of these urban models that we looked at do you think would allow for the best growth of your cities, the most effective growth, and why? So what do you think? Which one can give you the best growth? All right, let's see. Cassie Mizell running his answer. Good job. Okay, looks like Mizell is saying he thinks that the best model would be multiple nuclei. Interesting. Oh, change it to concentric. All right. Open containing folder. All right, Mizell just submitted, so we're going to go ahead and put that one out there. No one else is on apparently right now. So good job, Mizell. All right, so real quick, quiz yourself. It's time to climb. Ooh, let's do underwater. Now, the good news is I've got this set up in such a way that as people are coming online, let's say later on, if they want to do this when it by themselves, you'll be able to compete against and see what other people have done so far. So here we go. One person started. Let's go. Teacher view. let's go ahead on forward. So lastly, now what you know, knowing what you know now about city planning, what do you think the Walt Disney proposal for Epcot City would have been successful? Why or why not? This is going to be your exit ticket for the day, so go ahead and get this done. Once again, on Wednesday, I'll have, fingers crossed, I should be having something worked out so I can actually get you guys to start drawing your cities. I'll probably end up having to do something a little bit different, but I've got something in mind for it. Don't worry. We'll find out. So on Wednesday, we're going to look more about development in the city, and you're going to be doing part 2 of your city planning project. All right, guys, so that about does it for me. Go ahead and finish up your exit tickets, and I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Take care.